All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 373. You and women? Feminism is about silencing men. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson.
Hello.
And we have the Doge in charge, Brian Martinez, working in the background to make things go more smoothly. And tonight we're looking more into some of what UN Women is doing. We've been looking into UN Women's complaints about activists who support things like paternal custody and due process rights for men. And make no mistake, they don't hate our activism because we're doing anything wrong. It is about fighting for due process and fighting for paternal custody. Those are the things that they're mad about. They're mad that men want an equal seat at the human rights table, that men want violence against them addressed in terms of family violence and such. They're upset that men want to be treated the same in the courtroom as women are, and not as a lesser litigant or a automatically guilty litigant, especially not in civil cases where guilt or innocence isn't the question. But let me get rid of that. What we've gone through so far is them stating all kinds of falsehoods about men's rights activists, and then we've looked a little bit at some of their ideas. We read through this bullshit last week or last episode, and this episode we will be looking at the actual pamphlet. I wasn't sure I was going to do this, but then I started reading it and I realized there's a couple things we do actually have to look at here before, and there's a little bit of like the funding, the U.S. AIDS funding that we were looking at before. This isn't a rabbit hole; it's a whole rabbit warren. So we're going to look at this,
and we're badgers.
Oh, sure.
So we know our way around a warren, or
Yes.
whatever the badger equivalent of a warren is. A set.
That is true.
No, a bunch of badgers, whatever it is.
That is true. And also we eat rabbits. Just saying.
The badgers eat rabbits?
Badgers will eat fucking anything. If they're hungry
shit.
and it's alive, it's meat, it's food.
Well, I know honey badgers do.
Yeah, honey badgers do.
Honey badgers will eat lion balls if they feel like it.
Yeah. I will tell you what, if they are cooked, I will try them. But rabbit is pretty good. If you haven't had it, it is pretty good. Just my grandpa used to hunt. He used to be a very prolific hunter. So I've had all kinds of interesting things. And yeah, badgers eat rabbits. So sorry guys, I ate the Easter bunny. No eggs this year. Next year.
It's wabbit season.
Wabbit season. Well, duck is pretty good too.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really. I can't pick one and say it's better than the other either.
I don't remember ever eating rabbit, but it can't be better than duck. And it's always duck season.
Oh, it is. It isn't better, but it is good. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to pick one. But they are both better than bear meat. Bear meat, if you don't cook it right, is really not good because it has a gamey taste. It's hard to explain. It's really strong flavor. And if you don't season it right and you don't treat it right before you cook it, it just you got to be hungry to eat it. But if it's done well, it tastes pretty good.
Especially polar bear liver. That's lethal to humans because they're super carnivores and it's too much vitamin A or something. But them sounds like fattened words. I want to try eating polar bear liver just once to see what it's like. They eat just enough to not kill me. What is wrong with me?
The same thing. But in any case, yes, badgers we will eat. Many of us will eat just about anything. I mean, I ate an earthworm once to prove my point in an argument. So, as a kid, not as an adult, they're not poisonous. I didn't die. My classmates watched all day to see if I would or not. Nobody told an adult, by the way. They all just are like, "Oh my God, she ate it. Is she gonna die? Let's watch." Because we were kids.
It can happen though. I heard this one story of a guy who ate a slug because his friends dared him to eat a slug, and then he got this. Slugs are poisonous. Paralyzing parasite. Don't
very
don't
different from earthworms. Earthworms and slugs are two very different animals. But in any case, yeah. So this tells you though, don't get into arguments with me because I am that determined. If you better have your information, you got to prove me wrong. In any case, last week we kind of went over the excuses that they have made for this worldwide act to end violence against women. Notice, by the way, it is not named the act to end family violence. They don't want to end violence when the woman is the perpetrator. They only want to end violence when the woman is a victim. Right? They don't have an act to stop women from abusing their children, and they don't have an act to stop women from abusing their husbands. Statistics out of in the U.S. and the U.K. demonstrate that a significant portion, different statistics give different levels, but a significant portion of domestic violence, partner violence, intimate partner violence is female initiated and female perpetrated. And about 70% of one-way violence, where the perpetrator is engaging in violence against the victim and the victim is not using violence in self-defense, that's female perpetrated, not male perpetrated. Only about 30% of that is male perpetrated. And then there is one study that shows that among violence that is two-way, where both parties are engaging in violence against each other, those relationships are associated with more perpetration from women, but not more perpetration from men, meaning that women are initiating more often. And this is a consistent issue. Women are more likely to walk away with injuries because they are essentially poking the bear. Quite frequently in intimate partnerships, the man is the larger partner. Not always, but quite frequently the man is the larger partner. He's faster, he's more experienced at defending himself against a violent assault, but also in the heat of the moment during a violent conflict between two people, you have less opportunity to pull your punches. It is much easier to control your response if you're initiating violence and to do things like restraining your partner if the partner looks like they're going to start something, as opposed to after your partner has backed you into a corner, haranguing you and yelling at you and is now hitting you. In that instance, you end up more in a situation where your violence is completely unplanned, right? You haven't got forethought involved. And so when you attempt to grab and restrain or push away or anything, even hit to defend yourself, it's going to be harder. It's going to be stronger. It's going to be less careful about where you're grabbing and so on. And so you end up, of course, women walk away from that with more injuries. Now, it's not always the truth. Like, that's not always the case. Sometimes when women engage in violence, they use weapons, guns, knives. There was that one story out of, I think, Minnesota. I might be wrong. The woman that used a machete to force her partner into a sex act. And they won't label her a rapist, right? She forced him into a sex act against his will using a weapon, but they won't label her a rapist because she's mentally ill. Unlike other rapists who are engaging in perfectly rational behavior, like I think all rapists are mentally ill. I think all rape is irrational behavior because it involves forcing yourself on someone who doesn't want to be with you. It's the exact polar opposite of what people want, which is for other people to be attracted to them, for the people that they're attracted to want them. So it's facing rejection over and over again throughout the entire assault. It seems pretty irrational and crazy to me.
I like to leave some room open for the possibility that some people are just assholes.
I think most people that are that much of an asshole are still crazy.
Poorly raised, perhaps, and badly miseducated. But I don't want to give all of them the out of being mentally ill. Some people are just nasty fuckers. There's nothing wrong with it.
My take on that isn't that it's an out. I think if somebody is so fucked in the head that they are a danger to other people, they should not be on the street. For instance, if you are found not guilty by reason of insanity in a case where you have committed a crime against another person, a violent crime, you should be incarcerated in a mental institution for life, or at least until they find a cure for whatever it is that made you behave that way. I genuinely don't think people should be let back out on the street, either due to incompetence by insanity or incompetence by intellectual disability. If they can't refrain from being a physical threat to other people, then they should be under the management and control of other people who can keep them from being that threat. We shouldn't be needlessly cruel, but
counter proposal, wood chipper.
I don't believe in that, because if somebody can't help doing something, it's that punishing them is not fair either. If somebody is fucked up like that, punishment is like it's the same thing as punishing somebody who had a car accident because they had a heart attack. Right? They really couldn't control the vehicle if they're having a heart attack. That's not their fault, right? Or a meteor falls out of the sky and hits their car. If your brain doesn't work right and it makes you, we don't do that to people who are a threat to themselves either. We institutionalize them.
I don't think we should punish people more if they can help it. I mean, surely if they can't help abusing people in the worst possible way, then if anyone should be executed, it's those kinds of people. I mean, if they can help it, they should be helped to help it. It's this whole idea.
Punishment is intended to be a deterrent, not a vengeance. Like when we send people to prison for something that they've done wrong, we're not doing it to get revenge. We're doing it to send the communication that they're going to face a consequence if they do this, right? People who can't help it are people who, if you show them that they're going to face a consequence, that won't change their behavior.
So, right? Wood chipper, surely.
No, because we have a standard against cruel and unusual punishment. And that standard doesn't end at people who are so badly handicapped that they can't live among other people. And it's no different to punish somebody for being that kind of handicapped than it is to punish somebody for needing a wheelchair, or to punish somebody for needing a sign language interpreter, needing the support of being institutionalized. And not all people who need the support of being institutionalized are dangerous to other people. Some people just can't take care of themselves either. I work with people with intellectual disabilities, and it runs the gamut from people who just need a little help, somebody to be there in case, they panic when the fire alarm goes off, or they need help budgeting for their own lifestyle, or they need somebody to help them if they get weird junk mail to make heads or tails of whether this is a scam or a legitimate offer and stuff like that. And then it goes all the way to the other end, where you have people who are so disabled that they cannot feed themselves and they cannot bathe themselves and can't do their own oral hygiene and things like that, but they still can do, they still can have a social life. They still can have experiences with other people, and they are alive.
They can still rape and murder other people.
No, not unless they get out of the wheelchair.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it's still, if you're dealing with somebody that is so handicapped that they cannot control their own behavior, that also runs a gamut. You have some people whose inability to control their behavior is at the end of, they have tics where in the middle of their perfectly sane discussion of something, out comes the word bitch, or their head twitches and their hand raises up in the air, or things like that, to people who have to turn their lock 5 or 6 times in order to be sure that the magic of the lock will work and the door will stay locked, or they have to keep checking to make sure that they've turned the oven off, have to wash everything in their house over and over again, hand wash so much that their skin is raw.
Well, that's obviously not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about psychopaths who actually get off on causing pain and misery to other people, and if they can't be fixed, then why should the state spend the money required to incarcerate them in a mental facility or a prison?
For the same reason that we take care of other people who have that level of handicap. Right? It isn't just because we find someone's handicap distasteful and awful and horrifying does not mean that we treat a human being like garbage. We manage them. We don't engage in cruelty. And killing someone is an act of cruelty. It doesn't matter what the person would do if they were free. It matters what we do. And it is fair to put someone under care and to put someone under a lockup if we know that they are a danger to other people or a danger to themselves. But it is not humane and it is not civilized to use that as an excuse to engage in cruel and unusual punishment. It never has been. We have a history of that level of violence, but until reasonable people can eliminate the violence from their own responses to other people, we can't remove violence from the general public. But this act is mostly about people who can be reformed. And one of the things that's really a standout thing in my experience with debating people who talk about domestic violence, particularly people who work for agencies that support female accusers, female domestic violence accusers and such. Their take on it is that women deserve better treatment than men when they are victims of domestic violence. So you have male and female victims of domestic violence. You have children who are victims of family violence. And you have people raised in that environment who go on to become perpetrators of family violence. in adulthood. And rather than wanting to remedy the situation by helping both sexes learn to maybe engage in arguments and debates and handle conflict with each other without violence, they want to punish men, and they want men to be treated as if they are guilty, regardless of evidence, and they want women to be able to make allegations with impunity, regardless of evidence. And so even if a woman lies, and they want lots of money for their organizations. And ultimately, if you really want to address the violent psychopath issue, one of the most important things that we can address is intimate partner violence. A lot of times, when somebody reaches the level of handicap where they aren't salvageable anymore as a human being because of their violent impulses, you trace back to their childhood. This is the environment they grew up in. Mom attacks dad. Dad puts up with it for a period of time and then eventually hits back. Mom and dad hit each other for several hours, yelling and screaming. And then the next thing you hear is mom and dad having makeup sex. Right? That is the environment. And kids raised in that environment are often neglected and abused, and they are taught that the only way for them to get what they want is violence. The only way for them to get their needs met is violence. And the only thing that they're going to face if they show any weakness is violence. And if they've already got a predisposition toward any kind of mental health condition, that pushes them over the edge. So,
I'm just wondering how extreme the case has to be before we finally go, all right, let's just kill her. I'm thinking of Axel Rudikabana. You know that guy, right? The guy who stabbed like 11 young girls aged 5 to 8, I think it was. And when he appeared in court, he showed no remorse whatsoever. He was like, I'm glad they're dead, and I would gladly kill more of them. Some psychopaths are actually like that. They don't even feign remorse. And I'm like, I think Axel Rudikabana should be. I think Axel Rudikabana should be murdered by the state. I think that's the kind of extreme case where we shouldn't lift a finger to help this guy other than to kill him.
I don't think the state should have the power to.
No, neither do I.
At all.
If there's any,
and I don't think
if there's any doubt at all as to their guilt or their remorse,
even if there's no doubt, I still don't think the state should have that power, because the state decides there's no doubt even when there is, and it's the thing that changed my mind on this was a case of an intellectually disabled man. The evidence against him was circumstantial. He showed up at the crime scene, according to his story, he showed up at the crime scene after the crime had happened and panicked because of the violent scene and ran. And according to the prosecutor's story, the fact that there was his footprint there placed him at the scene. It doesn't matter if they can prove it was during the crime. He's guilty. And he didn't have a real defense. He didn't have a chance in the court system. And they decided that he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, the crime was particularly brutal, and it was against an elderly woman. And they executed him, and he died screaming that he was innocent, fighting the guards, begging for his life. And because he never really got through all of his appeals, we have no way of knowing whether the state railroaded this man or whether he was actually guilty. And this is how the state handles the death penalty. And that there have been numerous cases like that where there are reasonable doubts, but because of the way the court system works, that evidence isn't heard in court, or the individual doesn't have a valid defense, doesn't have a good defense, like they don't get a good lawyer, they don't get a decent public defense, and they're found guilty of something that they didn't do. And then sometimes the state profoundly fucks up its executions, and the individual is paralyzed but not sedated, and the poison that is given to them makes them have a heart attack. So they're laying there on the table going through the pain and fear of a heart attack, and they're experiencing the whole thing with full consciousness from the moment that chemical starts to take effect to the moment that they die. And if that can happen to somebody who was found guilty when they were actually innocent, that should never be allowed to happen. And there's only one way to make sure that never happens, and that is if the state never executes anybody under any circumstances. So if you had to pick a random man off of the street and do that to him in order to execute the individual that you're talking about, or better yet, somebody that you know, just think of all the men that you know and roll the dice if you have to, whatever. Just pick one and choose that man and say, all right, in order for us to have the right to execute this criminal that we know is guilty, that I think should be executed, we're going to put you through an execution in which your paralytic will work, but your sedation won't work, and you're going to be put through a heart attack and you're going to die. And I've chosen you for this so that we can kill this other man. Would you do that?
I don't know. Again, I don't trust the state with much. If we had a way of, I mean, what about the way we kill animals in slaughterhouses? We have this instantaneous electrical bolt that just goes right through the brain and kills them immediately.
We have an electric chair, and it's been deemed not humane by many, many people. And again, we're okay with that. But would you choose, say, one of your friends or family members to sacrifice along with that individual in order to, we know that we're risking that when we have our government has a death penalty and our justice system makes those decisions. Would you select from among your loved ones an individual to sacrifice so that we can kill this man?
No, if they killed 11 children, or killed 3 children and stabbed.
No, an innocent individual from among your friends and family has to die too. Which one?
Well, no, innocent people shouldn't be killed at all. I don't.
Yeah, and the only way to guarantee that, my conclusion from reading everything I've read about the way the death penalty is handled, the way the justice system works, is that the literal only way to prevent the sacrifice of innocent people in order for us to be able to kill these other people is that the death penalty doesn't exist. There is no death penalty because there is no failsafe to prevent the government from taking innocent people that they have found guilty because of abuses within the justice system and killing them too.
Well, show remorse. Isn't that the whole a large part of
no
of how we decide it?
No.
If someone shows remorse or not?
No.
Why not?
Even if somebody shows remorse, they still can get the death penalty. If someone maintains their innocence and the evidence against them isn't rock solid, they still can get the death penalty.
Well, that shouldn't happen.
If someone is underage and the court determines that even though the reason that they're violent is because their whole life they've been subjected to violence, and violence is all they know, they still can get the death penalty. The death penalty has been visited upon 16-year-olds who could have been redeemable. It's the least responsible entity to be handling this. The government is the least responsible entity to be handling this. There is no accountability. If an individual gets the death penalty and is executed and then is found to be later on innocent, they don't go back and try the judge and the prosecutor. They don't go back and do it unless somebody fights really hard to make sure that accountability happens. Somebody in their family. And a lot of times people who end up in this situation are people that don't have folks close to them to defend them. So it's not unattached. It's not cut and dried that we're just executing people who have committed heinous crimes and it's been solidly proven and they're irredeemable. The death penalty gets handed down quite regularly to people who are wrongly accused and wrongly convicted, and not all of them get justice on appeal.
Yeah,
some of them get executed.
And I can see both sides of the argument here, but you have to also take into account that there are innocent people who get locked up for life sentences that are innocent and end up dying in jail over other circumstances, right? So even being put in jail for even if it's not a life sentence, there's a high likelihood that you are not going to survive being put in prison for that long against other actual murderers and rapists and things like that. So I mean, it's I don't know. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. What do we do with the people who will just say, I'm innocent, even though all of the evidence points to their guilt? It's just a fucked up situation. I mean, it really is.
That's why I advocate for humane containment, because when you use punishment as a revenge instead of as a deterrent, and when you use incarceration as a punishment in a system that is just as violent as the homes that many of them came from, rather than putting the kibosh to the cycle, you are perpetuating it. Right?
Well, I'm not even talking about revenge. I'm asking myself, is there any line that can be drawn where someone deserves to be killed? And I'm not talking about people who protest their innocence. I'm talking about people like Axel Ruda-Cabana, who's like, I'm glad I killed them. I'm glad they're dead, and I'll do it again. And I don't care if you kill me. I want you to kill me. Like at that point, surely it's at least arguable to do what must be done with such a person. And I don't trust the state, but what's the alternative? Like getting a lynch mob not associated with the state to do it by themselves. In either case, neither of these entities is fully to be trusted. But like, where do you draw the line? At what point is it okay for either the state or some kind of mob to do the right thing? And should we house them in a facility for the rest of their lives? In Axel Ruda-Cabana's case, because he's only 19, I think, at this point, he's going to be there for the next 50 years or so, and surely it's incumbent on us to not burden ourselves with having to house them in a facility for that long. And if they if they show no remorse whatsoever, if you know for a fact they're going to kill people, even if they remain in prison, they present a danger to other prisoners, other prisoners who could be rehabilitated, or they even pose a danger to the prison officers. And in Axel Rudickman's case, he did throw some boiling water over a prison officer. Like to keep someone like that in prison or in a mental facility for 50 years, you're endangering people who don't deserve to be endangered. And if he's perfectly okay with being killed, then fucking kill him. I don't,
Yeah, no,
that's still
I agree.
That's still a situation where if you give the state that power, you're still giving the state the power to execute people who are not guilty as well, and who the state abuses into looking guilty enough to get the death penalty. And again, the reasonable alternative is lifetime containment. And if we improved the justice system to the point where people who could be rehabilitated were, and people who haven't committed acts that heinous aren't housed with somebody who is, then we wouldn't have as much danger with the few individuals that would remain in incarceration.
Well, then that also begs not the question, but the discussion of the state of the penitentiary system in and of itself, because it is not designed to rehabilitate anyone.
No, it's not. It's really bad.
It really does not. And so what is the point of sending these people away? You're sending them to desensitize them to everything, right? They are forced to be alone, right? They're sometimes in solitary confinement. It's to just dehumanize them in every single sort of way. There is no such thing as rehabilitation going on in our current penitentiary system. And, there is no distinction being made between people who can be rehabilitated and those who actually need mental assistance. We've done away with mental facilities in this country.
Yeah, we have. We've really we've done a lot of damage, actually.
Yes.
And when I keep wanting to do a full episode on the prison system in the United States, and it's the thing that's been difficult for me is trying to get together the research on it, because I get sick reading this stuff. It's so bad that it literally makes me ill every time I start delving into it. That's what our men, because it's about 95% of people in our prison system are men, and a majority of them are in there for petty things that some of them shouldn't even be illegal. Like, there's a huge population in our jails that are in there for buying or selling substances like marijuana.
Non-violent offenders.
Non-violent offenses, that's right. And a lot of them end up in there in juvenile detention, starting out, and they face violence in juvenile detention. A portion of them face sexual violence from the female staff in juvenile detention. There's a huge amount of perpetration of sexual misconduct against the prisoners by female staff in the jail system as well. Along with, like, everybody thinks prison rape is something that other prisoners are perpetrating, but there's a significant amount of it that's done by the female staff, and against the male incarcerated. Whereas in the female system, it's mostly inmates doing it to each other. But in the male prison system, besides the violence and the interpersonal violence and the sexual violence, you also have a mafia system where people are being bought and sold, goods are being bought and sold. There's a whole underground market. There's a whole there's a whole system of abuse in the prison system. And it's not just among the prisoners. They have help from prison staff. And that the women on the prison staff are a rather significant part of that. So the entire situation is a lot more complicated than people think.
Well, it really is.
When you run into somebody who has committed, say, a violent crime in adulthood, and you look into that person's history, that person may have come from an abusive home. They may have had a mental health condition or an intellectual disability. In fact, a rather large portion of the prison population are people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities especially, or mental health conditions that are untreated. And then if they've been in the juvenile justice system, that's where they had their first contact with gang members and became part of a gang. And after that, when they get out, they're used by that gang over and over again until they end up in the adult incarceration system. And then they end up meeting another gang, and then they, or their gang is already in control in that prison. When they come out, if they come out again, they're used over and over again by that gang. And so by the time they get to the point where, you know, they've shot somebody or they've committed a murder in some other manner during some other crime, that they become eligible for the death penalty, they've been through a system that makes them that way, and then we use that same system to punish them for it.
And I think it goes deeper than that. I really do. I think it begins at home, you know, and that is the most taboo place to even begin the discussion, because then you have to blame the parents more often than not the mother, because the fathers are, I think what is the statistic? Something like 75% of the people who are inmates have no father at home.
Yeah,
you know,
and
it's
a large percentage.
Yeah, and then it goes back to the mother having to take accountability for the reason that that child has no father at home. And like it or not, I don't care who argues with me about that. That is, it is at least 50% the mother's fault why there is no father in the home. Right. And so
Yeah.
we can't even begin to have that conversation, because again, it goes back to women having to take accountability for their fucking actions. And Lord knows we can't do that. Right. So, you know, the path, the pipeline to prison does not begin in school. It begins at home.
Yep.
And that is the conversation that we are just not allowed to have right now or anywhere in the society, except for here. This is a safe space. We can talk about this shit.
Yeah. We use the real interpretation of safe space, not the feminist interpretation of safe space.
Yes.
A real safe space is a place where you can talk about uncomfortable topics, and the topic will be addressed. You're not going to be accused of bringing up uncomfortable topics to make things uncomfortable for other people. You're not going to be accused of microaggressions.
The high crime of misogyny.
Yeah. In terms of the single mother thing, I got to point something out, and I've pointed it out in more eloquent ways, and I've pointed it out in more crude ways. I think the crudest way I pointed it out is, women need to learn that you can't turn a dipshit into a diamond by polishing his knob. Mm-hmm. We decide who we consent to. We don't, somebody else isn't consenting to sex on our behalf, right? We decide that. If somebody else consents on our behalf and we don't agree, that's rape. And we have legal recourse for that. There are laws against rape in every nation. Some of them are better than others about how they handle it. Some of them are very bad about handling due process end of it, and some of them are not so good about handling the evidence end of it. So you do have the gamut there, but men don't have that recourse in most countries at all. Even in countries that say they do, they don't want to call it rape if a woman does it to a man. Mm-hmm. And there have been instances where women have forced men against their will and gotten away with it because laws that they're charged under don't apply if the victim is not penetrated by the perpetrator, if the victim is forced to perpetrate, right? So we have first step when we decide we're going to have a baby with someone. We have all of the say in the matter in terms of who, what the yes is and what the no is. We are the key holders to the uterus. Nobody gets in there without our say, at least not without facing a potential criminal charge for overriding our say. So in terms of consensual sex, in terms of consenting to the act that conceives the child, the woman has every opportunity to be a judge of character. So women who fuck deadbeats and become unwed mothers, I don't have any sympathy for you, because you chose that man. You decided to bypass Mr. Right for Mr. Right now, or Mr. Big Dick, or Mr. Pretty Car, or Mr. Badass, or whatever. And now you're mad that after you decided to carry to term and you decided to retain custody of that child, he didn't change his mind about being along for the ride. Like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That is your fault. As a woman, that is your fault. You had control over that and you blew it. And women who create that situation and then raise a child without a father in the home are deliberately handicapping their children. That's child abuse.
Yeah.
If you do that to your child, that's child abuse.
Yep. It's only a no-no. It's only a no-no square until it becomes a yes square.
That is absolutely true.
And then you can touch me there.
And of course, the men who sleep with these women are stupid fucks. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think is going to happen? She's going to drag you through the court system, and she is going to win. She is going to get child support from you. She's not going to let you see the kid. You're not going to get an opportunity to make sure that that child is raised properly. And if you're not invested in that to begin with, you're not going to do it right either. Mm-hmm. So your offspring, the fruit of your loins, is probably going to end up in jail. Right? That's your fault. What are you doing with a hoe when there are women who are more accountable than that? Like the women who won't necessarily do, anything at the drop of the hat are the women that are more likely to raise your children with you. And if you don't want to have kids, don't risk having kids. It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. You use your birth control or avoid women. Don't let her touch the condom. Don't give her access to it, and don't stealth, because that's the dumbest fuck move you could possibly do. Right? Men are accountable for their end of it. We say stuff like this to men all the time. Men get told these things every day. They get told these things as boys growing up. Girls, on the other hand, a lot of you, that's probably the first time you've ever heard it's your fault if you fuck a deadbeat and then you become a single mom.
Yep.
There's a bunch of songs swimming through my head right now. Now you're a single mom.
Yep. But to that, I do want to get into this article and this article is relevant. The discussion we've been having is relevant to the article, and the article is relevant to this discussion in that when people put themselves in that situation and then try to make it work when it was never going to work, that's one of the circumstances under which domestic violence happens. And when children are raised in households with this type of violence, they are more likely to, as adults, end up as perpetrators of all kinds of violence. So these women don't talk at all about male victims of intimate partner violence. What they're talking about is an organized effort at ending violence against women. And they give their statistics, which if 70% of one-way violence is perpetrated by women against men, and 1 in 3 women globally have been subjected to physical or sexual violence, that means probably about 100% of men globally have been subjected to violence by a woman, and whether it's intimate partner or sexual violence, at least some point in your life, statistically, 100% of guys have been hit at least once by a partner. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out that that's true. Now, just to clarify with this, when they say physical or sexual violence at least once in their lifetime, if a woman doesn't have a job and her partner supports the family and won't give her mad money in the United States or in the UK and other European countries, that constitutes, under the law and under feminist standards, which are what have influenced the law, that constitutes economic abuse, and it is considered a physical form of violence. Now, before you say, well, that means men haven't been subjected to physical violence, how many married men listening right now have credit card debt that you didn't run up because your wife got the credit card and went to, Black Friday sales at Walmart or some shit like that? And what were you going to say, Mike?
I wasn't going to say anything. I was muted. Sorry.
That's weird. I swear I heard your voice.
No,
I think that was me, and I'm yes, no, those men are very silent, and one of the biggest causes of divorce is financial problems within a marriage.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that gets overlooked, and it's typically the women who are just spending money like it's, my money is my money and his money is our money.
Yeah. By the way, I do see the super chats. I will read them before we end, but I'm not gonna interrupt this for them. But so that's one thing, and there's a few other things like that. The things that are considered domestic violence when a man does it to a woman, but not when a woman does it to a man. He gets a new job and he moves you across the country. Like in the United States, that's 1,000 miles or more, depending on whether you're moving north and south or east and west. And you no longer have close contact with any of your friends and family. Domestic violence advocates will accuse him of isolating you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't like any of his friends, and you systematically choose to, well, I don't like Bob. I wish you would stop hanging out with Bob. I think he's a womanizer. I don't like George. I wish you would stop hanging out with George. He drinks too much. I don't like, Bill. I wish you would stop hanging out with Bill. Bill dresses like a freak. Whatever. Bill's girlfriend is a hoe. Don't bring her into this house. Well, what if that means Bill can't come? I don't care. Things like that. Women do that all the time, right? And nobody says, "Oh, you're isolating him. Oh, you're isolating him." No, it's why is he hanging out with these dorks when look what he's got at home, right? As if he should have to choose.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if a guy says to his wife, "This Christina of yours keeps trying to convince you to break up with me because I'm not giving you the moon on a stick," he's isolating her, and even though you don't hear a lot of, I've had friends who've been in, dare I say, toxic relationships with absolutely worthless women. And we never bring it up. We just quietly seethe behind the scenes and we talk amongst ourselves going, "Isn't she a fucking cunt? Yeah, she is. Are we going to tell him? No. That would just drive us apart. He's not gonna get it. He's he's quite committed to this useless fucking violent hoe. And if we say anything, it's not going to drive them apart. It's going to drive us apart. So let's just grin and bear it, and keep going until they inevitably split up. And they usually they do, because eventually it reaches this literal breaking point where he's like, "Yeah, no, this bitch was just pointless. Why didn't you guys tell me?" And we're like, "Yeah, we considered it. We really did. But you know what would have happened? It wouldn't have gone well. So we decided just to shut the fuck up and let it play out as expected."
Yeah, I mean, some people have to learn the hard way, and it's unfortunate, but you kind of have to let things play out. Because, some people just will not learn. They don't want to hear the bad thing about this person that they love. "Oh, I love her. She's the best. She's the greatest." Well, no, she has flaws too.
Yeah.
It's not a figment of your imagination. Those red flags she was giving you, you decided to look the other way because she was giving you pussy.
Yep. And it's cute if she's jealous of everyone else. It's not it's not a sign of love if she doesn't want you to spend time with your mom sometimes, or your sister, or if she's upset that you have there are women at your workplace that you have cordial work relationships with. That's not cute. It's not dedicated. It's
manipulative.
It's a little bit over the top there. And as soon as she's jealous of your male friends, that's even more over the top, right? That's an individual that may have some serious mental health issues that need treated. Women with borderline personality disorder have that struggle, and it's one of those things that struggle doesn't go away just because they know that they have borderline personality disorder and they're in treatment. They still have to try to rein that in. And some do. Some work very hard at it, and they are the best people they can be. And there are men who can have relationships with them and keep the relationship functional because they will hold that woman accountable for her end of that. But most men are not equipped to do that because they're raised to not criticize women. And if you are one of those guys, you should not have a relationship with that woman. And then there are women who pretend to try to rein that in, but they don't actually do it.
Yeah,
and they always have an excuse.
Yeah, because accountability requires self-awareness.
Right. And I'm not being jealous for no reason. I was worried about XYZ. I just, you have to be very, very careful with that. Same with narcissists. She has to be the most important person in the room. right? If she has to be the center of attention, and she gets upset if she's not, like it's one thing to be with somebody who's a showman, an exhibitionist, not nudity necessarily, but the person that tells all the jokes and likes to be a fashion plate and stuff like that, that earns enough money to pay for those things. That's somewhat borderline, right? But when you have somebody that has to one up other people's stories every single time and can't, just can't tolerate someone else being the center of attention, that's a huge red flag. Like, that's a red flag that'll cover a football field. That's a run flag. Right? But these people aren't concerned with that. They're concerned with 1 in 3 women globally, not the fact that most DV relationships are two-way. And of the ones that are one-way, most of them are female perpetrated. So what are we looking at here? They want legislation. They want they're going to say again, let's see, we looked at this last week, right? Feminists have been addressing this for 30 years, nearly 30 years, worldwide, within governments, within world government organizations. And what does it say? Level of violence remain largely unchanged. They've accomplished nothing. Nothing. We want to have you pay us to do more nothing. But what are they mad about? The rise of anti-rights movements, shrinking civic spaces, and backlash against women's rights continue to undermine efforts to prevent violence against women and girls that have achieved absolutely nothing, fueling a rise in attacks against women's rights activists. So we just read in the last couple of weeks what they think is an anti-rights movement. Right? Us talking about the fact that men also experience domestic violence, that women can be perpetrators, and that there needs to be, if there's going to be a system to address it, it needs to go both ways, and it needs to focus on teaching people nonviolent conflict management. That's anti-rights. That's what they're talking about. You feel like an anti-rights activist, Lauren?
Anti what now?
What about you, Mike? You think you're anti-rights?
They call me a men's rights activist or a men's rights advocate. So to some degree, I'm in favor of human rights, but to other degrees, I'm not. So it's a sticky process.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm anti-rights in any sense of the form, because what are we talking about? What is a right? Let's start the discussion there. What are they deeming is a right?
That's a good question.
Are we talking about this supposed right to women's health care, which really means pro-abortion? Well, no, I'm against that. I am fully against that. Sorry, nope.
What about the Canadian for a right to make taxpayers pay for women's sanitary products?
Nope.
A right should be the ability to do what you want within the confines of the law without the law coming down on you for doing that. A right should be the ability to do what you want without infringing on the rights of anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's seems to be what it comes down to. As long as you're not hurting anyone else, you should have the right to do whatever you want without hurting anyone else.
Yes.
And if at any point those rights are infringed, we come down hard on that shit. You shouldn't have the right to food. You should have the right to buy food, but you shouldn't have the right to be given food. You should have the right to purchase healthcare without having that right denied for frivolous reasons like your political opinions. You shouldn't have the right to be given things. You should have the right to take things as long as it's not hurting anyone else.
Or earn them.
Not earn them, yeah. Well, in the United States, we call that the right to pursue happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's in our Constitution. And a lot of people will point to that and talk about rights to be given things as if that they have a right to receive happiness.
Right.
But it's the right to pursue happiness. So when the Constitution was initially written, that right looked like maybe getting a job and earning money and buying things, or maybe going out into the wilderness and creating a life for yourself, building your own home out of logs and mud, that you turn into something like cement, and hunting and maybe farming a little. Right today, there's a lot less farming and going out in the wilderness because that's corporate or government controlled,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot more getting a job and earning money and buying things. But it's still the same right. Even if people object that, they can't take away from corporations. But yeah, I believe in the right to be left alone, right? The right to not be interfered with unless you interfere with other people wrongly. And that right hasn't been respected in this country or in the world for a long time. But yeah, it's supposedly anti-rights if you want men who are accused under, say, #MeToo behavior to have a right to due process in the court system and to have a right to not be punished for some allegation that's made against them unless the evidence besides the accuser's testimony proves that they did what they are accused of and that it is a violation of the accuser's rights. We are considered anti-rights activists because we don't support a right to get somebody incarcerated or otherwise punished, fired, canceled, whatever, just on the basis of an allegation. So what's their big goal? They've given us one. The overall aim. God, I hate the way this thing is set up. There we go. The overall aim of ACT, A-C-T, is to create an enabling environment for women's rights organizations, grease the wheels, smooth the pathway, and support the leadership and resilience of women's rights movements. Again, this is gendered. They're not talking about human rights movements. They're talking about movements that only serve women. Their advocacy and campaigning efforts to influence EVAW policy. ACT will achieve its results through direct investments in feminist women's rights organizations. Investments to strengthen institutional capacities, resilience, coalition building, network, and leadership. So it's about money.
Yeah.
They want your money.
Yep, because the money we have spent so far has gotten us so much gains. They've made so many wins in this arena that they still need more money.
Yeah, because in 30 years of having support from governments all over the world, all around the world, every single country except a tiny few that maybe don't have that much level of organization to them, they have achieved absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Fuck and all.
Yep. That's been helpful. And then they have this whole chart of this is what we're going to do. They want more institutional work, more women's rights organizations. So the structure of women's rights organizations usually are like, they'll have the set of people that they consider their grassroots. And then they'll have the people who are like they're volunteers that do physical labor, that do paperwork and shit like that on the groundwork. The people that go take petitions around or sit with somebody in court or whatever. And they don't get paid that much unless there's a grant from the government to pay them. And then above that, they'll have their board that meets like 6 times a year and makes hundreds of thousands of dollars and doesn't actually do anything. And that's where most of the money that goes to these organizations ends up. But they are wanting to conspire with each other. So all these women's rights organizations, shared advocacy agenda. They network. They look at what has worked in one country. How did we get this law passed? How did we get this money coming into our organization? We did these things. You should try them too, right? Knowledge sharing across the movement. So what they learn in India, they can apply in Africa. What they learn in the United States, they can apply in the UK. And they want to make sure that there aren't any women's rights groups that aren't part of this network. So no rogue women's rights groups out there that are actually doing anything about domestic violence, because then the cash cow will die. They want intersectional feminism involved. They want coalition building across not just feminist groups, but other groups. So they want to infiltrate other human rights groups, government organizations, non-government organizations. They want a network of data, research, and evidence that they can use. And when I say data, research, and evidence, I mean manipulated, because feminists basically do manipulate their research to obtain statistics that they want instead of actual evidence. And then engagement of key partners and networks. So when they say non-traditional actors here, they're talking about, again, government organizations, church organizations, people who will give them money. And what do they want to do? So they gave us a couple examples here. They have these 2 protocols. So they're talking about shared agendas in Africa and South America. They'll do sexual violence research in South America. They will provide funding to feminist groups in South America and Latin America, and they have programs. The Maputo Protocol in Africa and the Esperanza Protocol in Latin America. And we will be looking a little bit at both of those next week. We'll be reading. We might start looking into the Maputo Protocol this week because we still have a little bit of time. But last but not least on this, and I don't know if this is hidden. Let's see if I can. I don't think there's any farther down I can go. The UN Trust Fund, which the UN Trust Fund comes from money that the UN takes from the nation states that support the UN. So any nation that pays United Nations dues, essentially. There we go. Will provide grants to emerging women's rights coalitions at the regional or sub-regional level. in Africa or Latin America. So they're funneling money from whatever countries are paying into the UN. They're funneling money from that to feminist organizations in Africa and Latin America. So your tax dollars, because the United States does still pay dues, the UK does still pay dues, any European country you're in does still pay dues to the United Nations, right? Anybody that's part of the United Nations coalition, they're all spending your tax dollars into this fund. Your tax dollars are being sent to support organizations that are spreading feminist ideology, patriarchy theory, the Duluth model, the whole shebang in South America and Africa. Because they can make a lot of money doing that.
This is why so many people think the UN is the devil. Because we've often had this hypothesis that the devil will present itself as something aesthetically pleasing. It won't appear as a demon, as this red, horned, hooved entity. It will appear in the form of something that is pleasing to the eye. And this is why so many people still think the UN is the devil, because there's no UN men. and the devil, as presented in so many of these fictional presentations, that's not what it is. This is why there's a UN women, but there's no UN men. Despite everything they say about how women should be given everything and men should be given nothing. And this is why they bring aboard the Emma Watsons of the world. These cherubic women, sort of going, look, you should give us all the things, because look how angelic we look. And yeah, no, we've been warned about this for thousands of years, that the devil will present itself as something pleasing to the eye. And yeah, this is what this is. We generally find women pleasing to the eye, and this hasn't always been the case. Ancient societies like Greeks and Romans sort of understood this. They were like, no, women are no more pleasing to the eye than men. Why would they be? But we've been plunged into this deception for so long that we think women are angels and men are demons. But it's very much not the case. Yeah, if anything, like I said, the devil presents itself in entities pleasing to the eye, and that's very much women. I think that's always been the case, because to some degree, men do control society. There is such a thing as patriarchy, but that patriarchy is led by women, especially aesthetically pleasing women. Neotenous women, I believe, is the word, and yeah, women have only become more neotenous as the more neotenous women have been overrepresented in the genome, in those who pass on their genes, and we're now at the point where most women look like children, and most women look like adults, because evolution favors neotenous women and accelerated men. Acceleration being the opposite of neoteny.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that women have the availability of makeup and filters on their pictures to make them look like something other than what they really are, you know. But really, what this is if we have to boil it down, this is the top 1% of women in whatever category you want to frame them as, neotness, or, if they're financially successful. It's the top 1% of women using the top 1% of men to basically say these men are oppressing the rest of the 99% of us, and it's the weak-willed of us that will look at that and say, oh my God, yes, you're right. Emma Watson must be right about everything she says because she's rich and successful, and oh my God, how could she be wrong when she says that men are oppressing us? But it's not the fucking case, and we completely overlook the 99% of men who are not in those positions. They are using them as a cudgel to divide the rest of us.
Yep.
And I don't know how you break the rest of the women out of that hypnosis, because that's really what it is. They are being hypnotized into believing that they are just, oh, my everything in the world is designed against me, and I'm just a victim of everything and everyone. And look at this man, he's so rich and I'm just so poor, instead of looking inward and, trying to better themselves, to be in a better position to where they don't have to care about what other people think about them.
Yeah.
And
it's, you have this sense of entitlement that's sort of trained into girls growing up. Every want they have is responded to, and so they expect that that's going to happen throughout their entire lives. And when they hit adulthood and it stops, when it's not as prevalent for them, and it's still more prevalent for them than it is for dudes, right? Guys are on their own during their teenage years quite a bit, and then in adulthood, they're punished for failing, whereas girls get picked up and assisted. Guys get treated like it's illegal to be a vagrant, right? And even if you're a vagrant because your company that you worked for disappeared during the COVID crisis, or your ex-wife is getting every penny that you earn at your job, it's illegal for you to sleep on the street. In a lot of places, it's illegal for you to not have a place to live. And if you want assistance from the government, you need an address. If you don't have an address, they can't help you. So if your address is a dumpster in an alley, you're just fucked, right? And if you have a weakness, like an addiction, or sometimes a mental health problem that needs treated, homeless shelters won't house you. If there are women that want to use that homeless shelter, you go to the back of the line as a man, especially if those women have children. And sometimes even if those women don't have children and you do.
And yes, I was just about to say that even if you are a man and you have children, there will be women, even if the woman doesn't have children, they will be placed above a man who does.
Yep. And in fact, if you're homeless and you're a man and you have children, instead of helping you, the government might just try to take them and place them with someone else.
Yep.
So, it's, again, these protocols that they're talking about, they don't focus on human problems that encompassing all humans. They focus only on the problems that affect the female half of the human race. Okay. And if you have a coalition to focus on problems affecting the male half, they call you anti-rights. They call you anti-human rights. Because to feminists, human rights are only women's rights.
Yep.
That's why they say women's rights are human rights. They don't say it because people think that human rights don't include women. They say it because they want people to think human rights only include women.
Mm-hmm.
So these two protocols are written a little bit differently from each other. This one, stupid cookies. This one is more of a like this website is set up to look at it in terms of a pamphlet. There's another link here that has the whole protocol, and it's a more organized. Like this looks more like a governmental document, whereas if you go back to the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa, which, what did they call this? The Maputo Protocol, which somebody in chat said that means, Maputo means begging basket. Oh, that's Makuto with a C. I don't know. This says Maputo with a P. So I don't know what that means. But it looks more like something out of the early feminist, like the Seneca Falls document, where they had a bunch of whereases, and theirs were accusing men of things. Men have done this, men have done that to women. Women deserve this, and women deserve that. This has more. This is what's going on in Africa. So there's an African Union, and this has been composed based on the writings that were involved in composing the African Union, and so it cites law from that, and it starts out talking about the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Interesting that they say human and people's rights. Interesting way of saying that. I don't know what the difference between humans and people would be, but I suppose somebody does. To supplement the provisions of the African Charter, the Assembly of Heads of State and Government. So they want this to be continent-wide, not just some nation in Africa that they're focusing on, but the entire continent, all of the nations in the Union. They're referencing the non-discrimination article of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. They are referencing the article on anti-discrimination. Article 18 calls on all states parties to eliminate every discrimination against women. Just women. Right. And ensure the protection of the rights of women as stipulated in international declarations and conventions. And then it also cites Article 60 and 61. So it sounds like the African Union already has enshrined women's rights in its version of a constitution, in its charter, basically. That these are recognized within the charter. But, and it says here too, recalling that women's rights have been recognized and guaranteed in all international human rights instruments, notably the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and its optional protocol, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and all other international and regional conventions. So right there in that statement, they give the reason why this thing that they've produced should be completely unnecessary. Like, women's rights are guaranteed in every form of government communication to the world about human rights. Internationally, they've been recognized. They've been recognized in the African Union. And that they've been guaranteed by parts of the charter. So given all of that, what the hell do they need to ask for? So we're going to skip a lot of the rest of this. It just mentions more government organizations. Their claim, concerned that despite the ratification of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and other international human rights instruments by the majority of states parties and their solemn commitment to eliminate all forms of discrimination and harmful practices against women, women in Africa still continue to be victims of discrimination and harmful practices.
Oh my God. It's just fucking women anywhere, everywhere. They're all just fucking victims. I'm so sick of this shit.
Whereas men are just, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's just like the CEDAW map. It looks like so many other maps that we need to concentrate on Africa and the Middle East because they don't give women human rights. All right, to what degree do they give men human rights? Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's automatically assumed that men automatically have rights. Do you think men in Africa automatically have human rights? I don't think they do. Do you think that men in the Middle East automatically have human rights? I'm sure you think they do, because this is the paradigm we're presented with in the West, in particularly in the European West. We don't need to worry about men's rights because men just always have rights, right? Even in these backwater African countries where the very concept of rights has never particularly existed until us evil Europeans came along and tried to present people with the concept of human rights in general. But then another bunch of European people came along and said, well, what rights are women's rights? We don't need to bother about men's rights because men's rights just automatically exist everywhere. Even in the fucking Sahara Desert, men automatically have human rights. So we don't need to bother about any of that shit. What we mean by human rights is women's rights. And men can, in fact, go fuck themselves. Europeans have tried to improve the lives of Africans for the last 200 years or so, but it never occurred to them that would include men's rights. And I'm like, and they keep calling us racist for all this shit, but I'm like saying, maybe African men also deserve human rights. Maybe Middle Eastern men also deserve human rights. No, how very dare you. No, men automatically have human rights, so we don't need to bother with them.
Well, see, the takeaway here is that two rights make a wrong.
There you go. That's the thing. Feminists argue men have all the rights, women deserve some of them, and in order to have some of them, you have to take them away from men. Right? Mm-hmm. But let's say the right to due process. The right to due process is the right of an accused person in a court case. Due process is a standard of presentation, basically, a standard of examination, wherein the court looks not just at what the accuser says, and wherein the court doesn't necessarily presume the accused guilty, but instead you present evidence, you have the right to make arguments in your defense, you have the right to confront your accuser, and you have the right to tear your accuser's story apart to see if the accuser is lying, because some accusers do. And that due process involves things like the state shouldn't incarcerate you for years and years without a trial, making you wait with endless delays. The state gives you a right to a speedy trial that you can waive if you need to make delays. But if you don't, then the state has to act fast in order to make a determination rather than just keeping you in jail indefinitely without a hearing, which is what they did to some of the J6 victims, many of the J6 victims that they referred to as perpetrators. Many of them were kept for quite some time without a trial. And would have continued to be kept without a trial if the election had gone in the other direction. And they're not the only ones this is done to, but it does happen a lot to political prisoners, even in the United States, where we think we're better than everyone else about that. We're not.
We're
clearly
supposed
not.
to be. We're supposed to be.
Right. And similarly, just the right to be not interfered with, the right to be left alone. Right. So it's criminal. It's a criminal act for somebody to act on your body without your consent. But it's more of a criminal act if it's done to a woman than if it's done to a man. And it's especially more of a criminal act if a man does it than if a woman does it. So clearly it's not equal. It's not being treated equally. And in some instances, a woman can completely get away with it because when the state tries to prosecute her the way that it would prosecute a man, the criminal act that they accuse her of it's defined in such a way that it doesn't include women as perpetrators, and therefore she gets off scot-free. That's even happened in one case we covered a while back, where the perpetrator was the mother and the victim was her 2-year-old child. So yeah, here they are. Again, my take on this is, right, we just went through and read all of the ways that world government organizations and various other government organizations, world non-government organizations, the charter that they are talking about for the African Union and other African organizations have all made a commitment to eliminate all forms of discrimination and harmful practices against women, that this has been established since the 1990s. This is a thing that exists. They're already doing it. They've been working on it. And women are still victims of discrimination and harmful practices, according to these people. They have achieved how much? Have they achieved?
Fucking all.
Nothing. I swear I mean, hit that clip. It's insane. Like, all the money that's being put into this, all the organizational activity, all of the individual grassroots movements, everything that they've done, their first lament when asking for more is, all of this work we've put in, we have achieved nothing. Give us more money. Give us more power. With the money and power we've had so far has been completely ineffective. Therefore, you should trust us with more.
Yes, the more and more tax dollars, I think that needs to be explicitly explained, is that we are all being milked for these endeavors. And that is the thing that I cannot abide by. And, if this was like some, private investor type of situation, okay, all right, have at it. I mean, I still wouldn't agree with it, but the fact that you're taking money out of my fucking paycheck for this, and then, all right. It is also incumbent upon the United States to give over this tax money. Right? It's not like they just, like, these feminists or the UN or whatever organization just says, oh, hey, please, can we have, I'm just going to take a little bit out. No, the government has to be complicit with this. So, we also need to be looking at our leaders, or the people that we elect into office, and let them know we are not okay with our money going towards these ridiculous fucking regimes. Like, I'm not okay with this. I don't want my tax money going to that. But I mean, you will be hard pressed to find a politician who is not going to be on the take of any kind of feminist organization, because that's just, they want the votes, and they know that they have to get the women on board. right?
Get
And so
get the women's votes, guys.
right, and so this argument, or that feminists like to say, oh, well, women, we don't have any power. No, bitch, yes, you do. And you don't even understand how much power your voice has.
But apparently they don't do anything with it.
Yeah. It's just, it sickens me to the fucking back teeth. I'm just done.
And women just need a little bit more power. Just a
Mm.
little bit more. And next month we'll need a little bit more. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with all this power? We're going to make sure that women have more power, right? But once you have that power, what are you going to do? We're going to give women more power, right? But after that, what are you going to do with it? We're going to give women more power. Fuck's sake.
To do absolutely nothing.
Yep.
At least not what their intended goals are, right? You're not moving an inch forward towards your goal. What they're looking for is world domination. And I mean, by and large, I would kind of argue that they have gotten it, but
Yeah.
it's not enough. It's not enough for them. And
you know what women's organizations have achieved over the last 30 years?
The complete destruction of men's rights?
Yes.
3 worldwide, by the way, worldwide, okay? 3 out of 10 pregnancies are aborted. Worldwide. That's almost a third of conceived human beings in the world being aborted. Dying death by abortion. Abortion,
globally.
being aborted is the true leading cause of human death in the world.
Yes.
It beats starvation. It beats war.
Heart disease.
It beats murder. It beats accidents. It beats heart conditions.
I mean, it is murder, to be fair.
Yeah, but it beats interpersonal violence, murder that people recognize as murder. Abortion is violent. It is murder. It is the taking of a human life that is not guilty of anything. Right? And it is the largest number of deaths worldwide. The largest number of human lives that end every year are ended before they are born by medical abortion. This is not counting miscarriages, right? And it is not counting abortions that are done to prevent the death of the mother through because of complications of the pregnancy,
which is a fraction of a percent.
Right. That is elective abortions. So just that's what they've accomplished. That's what they got done. They killed a third of incoming humans. But aside from that, they have accomplished nothing else, except that they get a lot of money. And I'm pretty convinced. And I remember reading different connections here when we were going through it, the U.S. Funding site that we were looking at. This is one of the initiatives that has received money via that U.S. AIDS infection under the humanitarian initiative veil that has infected the entire world.
Humanitarian.
The humanitarian initiative veil. If you get a humanitarian initiative veil infection, you get to get organizations like these in your country. And then when they start enacting policy and influencing government policy and taking money from your country too, they start siphoning off your nation's budget. You end up with a full-blown U.S. AIDS infection. And eventually it will cause all kinds of attacks on your system of immunity to bullshit.
I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but it sounds a whole lot like communism to me.
Mm-hmm. So
dare
we'll
you?
skip their definitions for the most part. Oh, I wanted to point this out too. Right? They are firmly convinced that any practice that hinders or endangers the normal growth and affects the physical and psychological development of women and girls should be condemned and eliminated. Not children, not humans, just women and girls. Only the female half of the population gets this kind of care. So, yep. Oh, and they defined women. Women means persons of female gender, including girls. So girls are women. And we will start.
Now they can define what a woman is.
Yeah, now they can define women.
A woman is someone who deserves gimmies. Yes.
Yes. We will start next week at how they think they're going to eliminate the discrimination of women. Which just bear in mind that these are the new things they're going to do after 30 years of doing things that didn't work. So we shall see if they're going to do anything different than they've already been doing. But I will go ahead and get into our super chats now. Richard Beer sent us $5 and said, so an unrelated tangent, like the one we it wasn't really unrelated, but I sent Hannah a link to a video from an organization that produces sex education videos for those starting puberty. This one was about how often and how many morning after pills could be taken at a time. Give me a flashback to hearing about one of the girls who were groomed into prostitution and how one of the girls was going to a clinic to get a morning after pill on a daily basis. Another unrelated
What?
tangent. Yeah, that's that pill is a hormone pill. The morning after pill is a hormone pill. It has side effects. It does damage to your liver and your kidneys. It changes your hormonal balance. It can do damage to your reproductive system. It can do damage to your brain. It can do damage to your circulatory system. And if you're taking them every day, it's incredibly harmful. Then that's just that pill. The birth control pill has its own issues, right? Not to say that boys who are groomed into prostitution don't have their own issues. They get the hell beat out of them. They get abused in ways that cause permanent damage to the areas of their bodies that are used for sex. And they're more likely, because of the type of abuse that they experience, that they're likely to get killed or get infected with STIs. So they're not likely to survive their abuse. And but this is definitely a horrible circumstance for girls that are in that circumstance, that are in that situation. Given certain current events, there is going to be a massive walking back of a lot of acceptance and tolerance that so many people were advocating for. This is the hard part, right? We have a population, a subset of the world population that has been programmed to nice themselves to death. They think they're being altruistic because they are virtue signaling for groups that have more victim points on the progressive stack than other groups. But in reality, they're supporting criminals, violent people, abusers, and they dysfunctions in society that result in people's deaths, and also in a cycle of further abuse, further violence, further drug use, further dysfunction. But because the people that they are supporting have more victim points in the progressive stack, and they are programmed to put that detail before everything else, it's damn near impossible to convince them that it is not okay for them to support the dysfunction that they're supporting in those people and the damage that they're tolerating to the people around them because of that dysfunction. Because victim points. Well, these people are victims, and it's okay for them to do these things and just be left at large in public to continue to do these things. And if you object, it's not because you don't feel obligated to tolerate these things being done to you, right? It's not because you got your head bashed in with a rock and you're bleeding that you're upset. It's because this person is the wrong color. If a person that was a white male bashed your head in with a rock and you were bleeding to death, you wouldn't say a word, right? That is, they believe that logic. And so this is going to continue to happen until we can deprogram that cult. That's a very difficult prospect. We have Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 373, honey for the badgers. Thanks for the thought-provoking conversation. And I'm sure we provoked a few thoughts tonight, especially ones that are making the stupid choices and getting paid for it.
I hope they're all in the vertical chat. Hi, vertical chat.
Hello, special people.
Yeah, our vertical chat hasn't been too bad. We had we've got Bell Rick in there recognizing that once you understand we're at war, you will understand that men are the enemy and the system, and women's rights are a weapon. Is this something that I've been saying for a while?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, somebody mentioned the fact that you can tax more people if women work. And that's one of the reasons why they wanted women's rights.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, somebody mentioned the organ harvesting of people who've had the death penalty, which they can do that depending on certain types of execution, but they can't do that if the execution used poison or the electric chair, because the electric chair literally cooks you. So you really can't harvest anything after that. But yeah, we've actually had some decent chats from the vertical chat this time. They were actually they grasped what we were talking about and didn't call us furries. So
I saw that comment.
Well, there's been a few people that have made that comment, and I don't understand the crazy nasty ass honey badger meme is not a dead meme. People are still using that meme. And it's actively being used now by the right. They picked up on it, which it's kind of like your boomer parents picking up on your memes, but it's still a known meme. So the idea that we're us using it makes us furries is kind of silly.
Well, I
but
think
it still gets promoted.
I think our avatars kind of maybe lend a little bit.
Yeah, we took
assumption.
the joke a little far.
Yes.
But yeah,
that's what we do.
Hell, I'll be honest. I will be honest. I like using avatars because I don't like being on camera. It makes me feel like I'm too much the center of attention. I'm not comfortable with it, and I prefer not to. And that's the way it is. Right? I mean, I wouldn't mind switching to an avatar that looks like me instead of like a badger, but it's still, I would rather use an avatar. Like, I don't want people focusing on me and how I look like. I want people focusing on the issue that we're talking about and looking up more information about it on their own, and considering what's going on in the world and what they can do about it. So there we go. I don't know. Mangaka92 says we should use anime waifu avatars, but I think those would be a distraction.
Yes.
So, so we might stick with the honey badger ones, and the panda. But in any case, that is all of the super chats, super chows. I mean, we didn't get any super chats, no rumble rants, no anything from any place but our our specific communication line, which is I actually kind of like that. Like I said, it's good to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media sources tip jar, right? And I don't know if I did that spiel at the beginning of the show, so I'm going to do it now. For those who haven't who haven't heard from us before, I thought I still had that open. I guess I don't. Maybe I won't. Oh, there it is. I was going to say, maybe I won't do it now because I can't find it. But this show has a habit of dealing out these types of thought-provoking discussions for everybody. We do talk about some more frivolous things sometimes. We do more lighthearted shows sometimes. We haven't in a while because every time I open up something about world feminist organizations, I find like 10 new things to talk about. Because there's just so much. It's like I said, it's not a rabbit hole; it's a whole rabbit warren. But we do this all the time, and as experiences both long past and recent have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. They have tried multiple times to shut us down, silence us. We've been throttled, shadow banned, suspended, stricken. I guess YouTube, you get strikes. Like we've had all manner of don't do that, don't say that, don't talk about that, don't think about that, wrong think punishments from various social media, and we know that various third-party payment platforms have been pressured by the government in the past and by the banks currently to silence people like us as well. So we don't want to just rely on that. In light of that, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, which is the most stable way to help us out. Can't get canceled by something like Patreon if you're not going through them. If you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/just-the-tip. That's where the super chows come from. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, which is our blog, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. So if you only want to remember one of those things, remember honeybadgerbrigade.com, and when you get to honeybadgerbrigade.com, just explore our menu to find out how to support us. And with that, I will thank everybody for listening. Thanks to my two co-hosts for going through this very annoying and dry shit.
Nerd!
and for the very thought-provoking discussion at the beginning. And thanks to Brian again for working in the background to make sure the vertical chat can happen, because I still haven't familiarized myself enough to make that a possibility. Fair excuse here. Between HBR and my regular job, I'm averaging 80 hours a week right now. So that's why I don't have time to learn anything new. But thanks, everybody, and good night, all.
Good night, y'all.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.